Well, let's look at the conversations of this Monday morning here in Johannesburg, South Africa. Today's African View, that is the feature where we have a debate on a contentious issue here on the African continent. And over the years, some educationists in the African continent and abroad have called for a rethink on how much homework children are given. I know we were all children at some stage, and most of us really hated homework. I know there are a select few that really loved homework, but many children I know used to really hate homework. And there are parents and educators on two sides of this particular conversation on whether or not homework should really be a thing. Should homework as a policy be implemented? Should it be done away with? And should children just be able to learn everything they need to inside the classroom? Well, we'll engage on that one in the first hour of the show in debate with various guests. Janine Hammond, the Western Cape manager for Club Engage, a provider of aftercare, holiday care and child care at events in South Africa. We'll also be speaking to Obert Masaurare, national president of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. And of course, Professor Ramodongwa Natabane, an educational psychologist. All three will be joining us in the first hour of the show, debating the issue on whether or not homework is necessary. We're going into the second hour conversation today. And you know what? There are many roles in the world that can be used and changed in various ways. Leadership roles are one of those, right? And it seems like there's been a transformation that lies within feminist leadership when it comes there. But what does the word feminist even mean? You know, many people will say, yeah, this person is a feminist, this person is not. And sometimes it's been given quite a negative connotation, I find, within society when one says they are or aren't a feminist. But what does feminism actually mean in today's world? We'll be having that conversation in today's second hour. Katamina, a feminist and educator from Sierra Leone, who facilitated a women empowerment training women-led organization in Pennsylvania, Liberia. The training explored a range of topics central to feminist leadership and activism. So looking forward to that. And we go into our fitness and nutrition theme in the final hour. We'll be exploring nutritional and healing treasures that lie within the continent's varied, indigenous foods. So it's good to talk about that because so many of our foods have been influenced by other parts of the world. But we also have our own indigenous foods here on the African continent that actually are superfoods and integral to our own traditional practices for centuries. So join us in the next 3 hours, not just by listening live, by joining our live streams on our social media platforms at Channel Africa 1. Find us there on Instagram and TikTok as well as on YouTube.
Hey, Pali, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing, Benji?
Hey, I'm still a little bit fluey.
Yeah.
You left me with the flu.
I'm
it's
sorry.
not from you.
Not from me, because I'm fine.
So I struggled on Friday without you.
I'm sorry.
But we did well, but it's great to have you back. Remember, WhatsApp number is +2763 406 9126. You can find us there in this 3-hour journey at Channel Africa 1 on TikTok, on Instagram, as well as on our X handles. Also, our YouTube page, at Channel Africa 1. That is the handle.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge aka Binal Export depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
It's 13 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. You're tuned in to On the Move with myself, Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama. We're going into our African View This is our debate conversation where we take a look at a contentious issue on the African continent and have various guests and experts debate that particular issue. Over the years, some educationists in the African continent and abroad have called for a rethink on how much homework children are given. I know when I was younger, I hated homework. I loathed homework, and I know a lot of children still hate homework to this very day, with some saying that homework should be done away with because they should be taught what they need to know within the classrooms. There are also parents and educators who support this practice, but there are also those who are not in favor for making learners do extra schoolwork at home. There are even some countries that have implemented a no homework policy. Is homework really an integral part of learning, or should or shouldn't children be assigned homework? That's what we're unpacking today. The guests that are joining us to debate this conversation is Janine Hammond, the Western Cape manager for Club Engage. That's a provider for aftercare, holiday care and childcare at events in South Africa. We'll also be joined by Obert Masaurare, national president of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, as well as Professor Ramudungwane Tabane, who is an educational psychologist. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us this morning to debate this issue. I'm going to start with you, Janine. Let's chat about homework. Perhaps give us your opening views on the necessity or lack of necessity of homework in our schools.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. I can speak as both parents and obviously the being in the after-school environments. I believe that children these days are so thinly stretched with the amount of work and exposure they have during school time that I find it's absolutely important for them to be able to come home and just decompress, spend quality time together, have a good reboot. Play is an essential part of learning. And also the other thing that I really believe is that there are so many working parent families that the parents don't have the capacity to actually spend time with their children in the evenings, revising, going through things. There's only so much time in the afternoons after school to do these things. Mm-hmm. And it creates an unnecessary stress and pressure on the children and the family when they should be actually focusing on connecting and a more holistic development of the child. So I am against high volumes of homework and happy to, unpack this with you guys.
Thank you so much for that, Janine. Let's come to you, Obert. All right, we'll go to Professor Ramudungwane Tabane, educational psychologist. Well, you are someone who really is really deep in this conversation as an educational psychologist. Perhaps give us your opening statement, Professor, and let us know where you stand in the conversation of homework.
No, thank you. Homework is, as you said, an integral part of learning. It gives learning and children an opportunity to interact by themselves, learning on the one side, and the child on the other side. The child's ability, the child's aptitude, the child's temperament, and here is the learning that doesn't change, that needs to happen. Because at some point earlier that day, there was a mediator. Now the mediator is away, that's the teacher, and now the child has to interact with that learning that happened. Now the child now engages with that particular element that assists them to grow and to develop. So I hear what your argument was at the beginning, and it needs to be very clarified. Is it about no homework or the amount of homework?
Well, Janine, let's come back to you on that one, since Professor is asking you a question. You did say in, the closing sentence that you are against, children getting excessive amounts of homework. So are you saying that homework is necessary, just not in big loads, or are you saying no homework at all? Janine, are you still there? Okay, I'm not sure if we have Janine on the line. Let's come to you. I will pose that question to Janine, Professor Tabane, in a bit once she gets back on the line with us. But let's continue. In terms of education and psychology, how do you actually understand that, how the child's mind works when it comes to interacting with conversation? We are still getting our guests back on the line. Let's take a break. And I'm really interested in that, to find out the psychology behind how we work, how we think, and how, because if you go to work, right, children are getting prepared to become adults in the world that we live in, the very capitalist world that we live in. And most, parents, most adults will go to work, will do the work they need to within that space, even if they've learned something new at work that day. Many of them come home and disengage with the work and do what they need to do at home. And of course, the home spectrum as well is also a place of thriving and learning, just like school is. So, learning doesn't only happen within the school environment for children, but it also happens within the home and social environment as well. And we need to see if that balance is being struck with the amount of homework that children get, or with just how, with children engaging with homework in the home environment. Let's take a break. It's almost 20 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. We're speaking homework. Let us know what you think about this conversation. Do you think children should be getting homework? Do you think they shouldn't be getting homework? And tell us why. At Channel Africa 1, find us there on most of our platforms, and watch our live stream and engage us there on our social media.
Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get set and be ready to go. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
21 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. We're speaking on homework on today's African View. That's the debate we're having. Should homework be given to children? And is it an integral part of learning? We have back Professor Ramodungwane Tabane, educational psychologist, as well as Janine Hammond, Western Cape manager for Club Engage, provider of aftercare, holiday care and childcare at events in South Africa. Janine, just before we lost you, Professor Tabane asked a very important question posed to you. In your closing statement, you said, you are opposed to children getting an excessive amount of homework. And the professor is asking, are you against them getting homework in general, or is it just about the amount of homework they're receiving?
I would say it's the type and the volume of homework they're receiving. I would recommend, in my opinion, it would be more beneficial for them to have reading homework and building a love for reading. It's not a stressful, pressurized type of activity. It's not something that parents have to be able to help with. And also parents don't understand the new curriculums and all the different technologies and that sort of thing out there. So at the end of the day, where the parents are meant to try to be helping the children, I think they're causing more frustration and tension within the home. So I would say the type of homework that they're given should be more linked to learning through play or creativity, reading, that sort of thing. Not revision of stuff that is being done in class, where the teachers are the ones teaching the children.
That's fascinating. And maybe let me bring it back to you, Professor Tabane, how you respond to that feedback from Janine, because it seems like they're talking really about the quality of homework that kids are responsible for today. What's your take on that?
Thank you, Benjamin. Let me also mention that I'm also with UNISA. I'm the school director of educational studies there. I hear what Janine is saying. And this is where, in most instances, it is lost. Parents are not supposed to do homework for the children. Parents are supposed to assist and make sure that their children have done the homework. It is an opportunity for the child to sit with that homework and indicate to himself, first and foremost, and to the teacher, whether learning happened during the day or whenever that learning was supposed to have happened. And it is for the parent to sit with the child and say, how were you taught? And how is it that you understood it in class? And how is it that you think is difficult now? Make sure that you have completed all the mathematics. Where you don't understand, do it as far as you understand, and then indicate to the teacher where you started to have problems. What we usually find, we're finding parents stressing about them not understanding the curriculum and the knowledge. It's not about them. Their time has passed.
Yeah.
And it is the time for this child, and it's the time for them not to teach their children to be like them when they have to teach their own children to do homework and to do what was done with them by simply saying negatively talk. Homework is difficult. Your teacher should be teaching you this. Why are they bringing you? Now, we need to break the cycle of negative talk in terms of work and homework in this instance.
Okay.
It's about an opportunity for the child.
All right, Professor, let's leave it there. I think I get your point there when you're speaking about the fact that it's also a responsibility of the child to actually follow through on that particular task of the homework and not necessarily the parent. Let me come to Obed Masauraure, who is a national president of the amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. Obed, welcome on the show.
Greetings, Benjamin.
Well, what's your take on this one? Do you think homework is an important aspect of education, and why so? And, a lot of questions are being asked around the kind of tasks in this debate that are given to the children. Seems like they're heavier than they should be, and the responsibility then gets relegated to the parent.
Yeah, I think with regards to homework, what is important is to emphasize on the age levels, to say at which level do we give which amount of load for the learners. So especially for the young learners who are still getting into school, they need the homework, but we don't need to overburden them. But we can't rule out the need for homework. Why? Because the first thing, when you ask these learners to do it at home, you are developing some habits at an early age, some disciplines to have them also being able to create their own learning spaces outside the school environment. Remember, learning should go beyond what the teacher tells the learner, but also the learner getting the attitude of learning on their own. So at an early age, it is always good to try to have these skills built using homework as a good model for that. And then they also have an early stage of trying to implement skills, apply themselves to what they've been taught, because if the homework is properly crafted, it gives the learner critical thinking skills at an early age. But also the most important thing for early learners that we shouldn't rule out is that most of their learning, they want to do it from their parents. And the role of the parent here, it teaches that parents who assist their children at an early age, the results are always better, because these are now still the role model, and learning from your parents. It doesn't really mean that the parent has to teach the learner, but the fact that they are around them, encouraging them, and monitoring that they're doing what they trusted by their teacher, it gets the learners excited about learning. Because remember, the parent is still a key role model when a child is still very young.
Okay, I hear that. That's an interesting take when it comes to early learning development. Jenny, maybe let me bring that back to you. What's your take there? Because there's an argument from OBET that this is actually good for developmental stages for young children when it comes to taking hold of responsibility, fulfilling tasks. And if they don't have that homework, what do you think the alternative would be, since you're not pro-homework?
For me, like I said earlier, reading, educational type of games that they can play. Again, I hear what, and I agree with, if homework has to be enforced, that it needs to be properly crafted. But unfortunately, it is not. The volumes of homeworks coming that we see on a daily basis coming through from various schools, private schools, public schools, is so much that the children don't have time to actually relax, reboot, and play. And it is causing a lot of mental stress. It's bringing a lot of anxiety. And I think we forget how important play is, especially in the younger years. And many children are skipping out on the other side of the fundamentals, which is the sports, and building the camaraderie and that sort of thing with friends on the sports fields. There are things to learn there as well.
Sure.
You know, negotiation, that sort of thing. There's many different ways to learn things. You don't need to be stuck with books and piles of homework and repeat what you've already done in class.
Sure.
I feel that, for me, it's really too much pressure on the children, and they disengage. They start creating a dislike for school because they don't have time to just be children.
Okay, that's an important point. I think all three of our participants are bringing a lot of strong points to this particular debate. What's your take there at home? Let us know. Is homework really an important thing? Do you think homework should be something that's consistent and assigned to children? What's your take on this conversation? Remember, let us know on +2763 406 9126. You can also engage with us on our live stream on our Facebook page, simply titled Channel Africa, and also our other channels at Channel Africa 1 on YouTube, and also our Instagram page. Well, we'll come back to our guest after our sports update and business news. For now, let's go to our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. I am Musibu Dimakura with the latest sports news at the SAWA. So the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament, currently underway in Egypt, has been rocked by allegations of age cheating. And some coaches have now started airing their voices, saying enough is enough. Now, first to raise his concern was Tanzania's head coach Ahmed Suleiman, complaining about the ages of Sierra Leone players, saying that there are not under-20 players. The Tanzanian team had just lost to Sierra Leone by 1-0 in Ismailia, and the West African side, making their debut in this year's competition, became the first team to qualify for the quarterfinals.
These are local players. Most of them, they are playing the second division or first division, comparing to even this team that Sierra Leone. If you see them, they are a little bit bigger than age-wise. It's not under 20 if you see. But we put more effort now to build up this young program, youth program, so that in the future we come up with a good and strong side.
Meanwhile, age cheating in African football has long been a serious concern, and the Confederation of African Football looks to have won the fight when they introduced the MRI scans. But this can only work until the under-17 level and not beyond that. Zambia's under-20 head coach Boyd Mulandwa says the cancer of age cheating can damage the game as well as the players.
But on our side, it's just to encourage the boys to keep on fighting. It's a youth tournament. We expect youth to be playing against youths, but if you bring people who are not in that category, it becomes difficult for others. And others, they just get intimidated by just looking at someone. You can tell that this guy is older than me, and it's going to be difficult for me to challenge him. That is the message that I can just say.
On to rugby news now. South Africa's Blitzboks saved their best for last this season as they went all the way in Los Angeles on Sunday to lift the World Championship title. So Philip Snyman's team beat Spain in the final of the Elite 8-team tournament following the regular season. They won 19-5 in California to end off a perfect weekend. In the semi-final, they beat New Zealand 26-5, which on day one of the tournament, they won all of their pool matches against France, Great Britain, as well as Argentina. It was also a second tournament win for the SA Sevens rugby team this season, this after winning the home tournament in Cape Town during the regular season. Let's hear from the winning coach, Philip Snyman.
I'm very happy as a coach. I think the whole team, we worked extremely hard over the last couple of weeks, and to be honest, a coach can lay out a plan and a coach can give the plan, but the buy-in comes from the players and the special moments that they created on the field. The coach can't coach that, so all credit must go to the players. I'm really proud of them, and they deserve this weekend. They played phenomenal, and they were definitely the best team this weekend.
On to tennis news now. Norway's Casper Ruud won his first Masters 1000 title on Sunday as he stormed to a 7-5, 3-6, 6-4 victory over 5th seed Jack Draper in the Madrid Open final with a gutsy performance that showcased his clay court mettle. Now, the 26-year-old 14th-seeded player playing in his 18th clay court final overcame both a rib injury sustained in the semi-final as well as a resilient Draper to secure a trophy after previously dispatching Taylor Fritz, Daniel Medvedev, as well as Francesco Cerundolo. Now, Ruud had previously reached 3 Grand Slam finals, including 2 at Roland Garros, a Masters 1000 finals in Miami back in 2022, as well as the Monte Carlo Masters final in 2024. And finally, in golf news, Scottie Scheffler secured his first win of 2025 with a dominant display at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson in Texas in the USA. The American world number 1, 28 years of age, who finished 4th at the Masters just last month, carded an 8 under par 63 to finish on 31 under, 8 shots ahead of nearest rival Eric van Rooyen. Scheffler also equaled the record for the lowest 72-hole score in PGA Tour history with 253 across the 4 days. It was also the 14th PGA title of his career. It's a wrap from the sports desk at this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. It's exactly 9:36 a.m. Central African time. I'm back with more sports news in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move.
Thank you so much, Musibudi, for that sports update. Let's keep things moving with our latest sports business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa and Benjamin. Good morning. A team of officials from the International Monetary Fund will visit Angola this week as the country edges closer to a new loan deal with the lender due to pressure following the slide in crude oil prices. Angola, which is sub-Saharan Africa's second biggest crude oil exporter, had to pay $200 million last month after JP Morgan demanded more security for its total return swap, a loan backed by Angola's dollar bonds. The IMF did not immediately provide more details on the mission to Angola and the expected outcomes. The Democratic Alliance is set to address the media today about its High Court challenge against the Employment Equity Act. The party argues the legislation's race-based employment quotas could exclude countless South Africans from job opportunities. The African National Congress has accused its largest government of National Unity Partner of being against transformation following the DA's legal challenge. DA Labour spokesperson Michael Bargram has, however, conceded that there is still a need for redress.
There is an absolute need for redress, and we need to explore ways and means of assisting that redress to ensure that we reflect the demographic of the country and at the job market. And we've had 25 years of employment equity legislation in this country, and it's destroyed jobs. Look at what the National Party did. It's exactly that. They practiced affirmative action, and we saw where that led us. It was destructive to any equality amongst workers.
Some labour law experts in South Africa say the Labour Relations Act can be used to determine whether requiring employees to return to the office is lawful. This as the number of people working from home increases. However, many South African employers are now reconsidering their policies and requesting employees to return to the office. Yvonne Mkefa is a labour law expert.
While there is no specific piece of legislation, but the contract of employment would state where an employee could work. When something is contained in your contract of employment, that affords rights for the employer and the employee equally. So if your contract of employment states expressly that you can work, or your place of work, you can work from home or anywhere else in the world, then before the employer can actually require you to return to the office, they need to engage you, either in the form of consultation or negotiation.
Sweden-based company Volvo Cars says it has sold 58,881 cars in April, down 11% from a year earlier. In a statement, Volvo Cars, which is majority owned by China's Geely, says sales of fully electric cars fell 32% to account for 20% of total sales volumes. Shares in the company were down 2% in early trade. Ratings agency S&P Global has reported that the Russian manufacturing sector saw a slight easing in its downturn in April, with contractions in both output and new orders slowing to a marginal pace. The Purchasing Managers Index (PMI) for Russia's manufacturing sector rose to 49.3 last month from 48.2 in March, marking a second consecutive monthly decline. But at a slower rate. A PMI reading below 50.0 signals contraction, while above 50.0 indicates growth. Let's have a look at financial indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 603. In Botswana, 13 pula 50. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling to 89. Zambia, 27 kwacha 78. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 65. Russia, 82 rubles 57. India, 84 rupee 57. China, 71.21. South Africa, $1 is at 18 rand 35. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound, 88 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,257, platinum at $957 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $59.10 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email, newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. 9 to 12 midday Central African time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
Thank you so much, Chandu Goligege, for that business update. We continue with today's African View, the debate feature where we really look at a contentious issue on the African continent. Today we're looking at homework and whether or not it is an integral part of children learning and developing, and whether or not it should, stay in schools or it should go. We still have on the line with us Janine Hammond, who is Western Cape Manager for Club Engage. We also have Obert Masaurare, National President of the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, as well as Professor Ramudungwane Tabane, an educational psychologist. Thank you for staying with us, everyone. And let's come to you, Professor Tabane. I want to speak about the psychology of how children learn, because although we're speaking about homework, we do know that children learn in different ways, right? And sort of flooding their day with what happens at school, does that not leave a space where children can learn through, playing with others after school? Children can learn through household conversations and household chores and other responsibilities that they can hold within the home structure. These days, children have so much homework and they spend so much time on homework that it's school, homework, and then straight to dinner and bed, meaning that they don't have enough time to engage with all these other ways of learning. What do you think about that?
Homework is one of a part. So it cannot be ruled out outside those chores that you have indicated. It is one of the requirements for one to start to grow and one to start to develop. You're quite correct. Children learn differently. And it is this opportunity that is being given for them to start to appreciate themselves and their own learning styles. Because remember, in a classroom, as much as we teach and train teachers to be mindful of inclusive education and the learning style that each and every learner has, but you would appreciate that in some parts, we are not talking here 1:15 ratio. We're talking 1:50, 1:60. So a teacher tends to veer and use one particular mode of teaching that might not be working for their child. So that homework gives them that opportunity at home to say, I've learned it in this way. And the parents teaching, or rather assisting the child with the homework. Remember, they're not supposed to do the homework, but assist.
Yeah.
The siblings assisting the child as well with the homework in terms of how they understand the solving of this problem. Perhaps it might spark a different way of solving a particular problem, or polish the child's own way of doing it, saying that, no, I prefer it when I'm learning in this particular way, be it visual or tactile, or it is that opportunity that is there. But another element that I wanted to speak to is the milieu or the environment that the children find themselves and the talk that they find themselves. If they get to be placed in a situation where there's constant negative talk about this work, about this role that they have to play. Remember, learning, it is a job of a child. As much as Benjamin and you, Palesa, your job is to interview us today.
Yes.
So the child has to learn that I have responsibilities and I need to execute them. And my execution is learning. And where I'm unable, I need to know why I'm unable and go and seek assistance where I'm unable from my mediator, the teacher.
I get what you're saying, Professor, there, but I think we're dismissing some of the points that were made that are important by Janine. And let me bring those points to you, Obet, in terms of what's your take around the fact that kids sometimes need to be away from work, and play is a very essential part of development. Play and off time is also a great way for children to also deal with less stressful tasks. How do you view that point? Because you also considered the mental wellness of these kids who are overwhelmed by so much work. Obet, let me bring that question to you.
Thank you so much. I think Janine brings a very important point which we should never rule out. Of course, the kids need to rest. They also need to play. But now, if the moment learning becomes a stressful activity, like I said earlier on, the homework itself is not tailor-made for that particular age group. We should be able to integrate the learning into the playing. So if we are doing a homework, you are counting and you have other codes that you are supposed to be doing. If the teaching at school was done properly and the homework really fits the age group, you should be able to see these learners as part of their play, integrating what they already learned and even achieving their tasks within the playing mode, but also inculcating the learning process. So really, it should not be stressing at all.
But then who would facilitate something so complex, Obed? Because that would be another task that would be added maybe for parents. But we know most of the time when parents are coming back from work themselves, have other tasks to also fulfill. So to incorporate play in education, it's something that would be probably very complex for parents to actually achieve.
In my other life, I'm also a parent and a teacher, and
sure.
This I picked from the teacher of one of my children, where they say, we are in this parents group. They say today's homework is like this. We urge parents to monitor that learners have achieved 1, 2, 3 task activities that can leading are as follows: 1, 2, 3. Even in textbooks, it's already in there, and the teacher is simply copying and pasting. Maybe it's the different curriculum that we are using. The teacher is simply pasting the tasks that are already in the textbook he or she is using, and the parents can simply assign siblings or someone to just do it as a way of accommodating both the play and learning. I think I was so impressed with the task that had to do with was it subtraction, but it had a whole lot of playing that was involved in when this were playing with the young one, and they so well. So we should admit that parenting is also a serious job we experience, but it should not be stressful, but we should be able to accommodate some of these tasks. And I agree with Janine that we shouldn't stress the young ones, and they can really get stressed if the learning process under homework is not structured in a way that also include play for them.
Janine, your take, Obed saying incorporate play in homework tasks. That seems like a task for parents to actually do the work for the kids so the kids can do the work. What's your take on that one?
Unfortunately, what we see very often is parents do not have the time in the evenings, and what then ends up happening, even especially in the older grades, is the parents end up doing the projects and the homework for the kid. So the child doesn't end up learning in any event. They're actually being taught that it's okay for somebody else to do the work for them because there isn't time. And I firmly believe that it is more beneficial for the family to be spending quality time together discussing, yes, how was your day at school? What challenges did you have? Is there anything you'd like to talk about? Over and beyond what they're learning in school, they're also dealing with very different types of children, different socio and economic backgrounds. Are they being bullied? Are they being ostracized? There's lots of different things that the parents can spend time working through with their children that is not going to impose a stressful evening on them. I can tell you, we, from my family perspective, there are many a night that it ends up in a screaming, shouting, and tear match because the children are tired. They're not actually absorbing what they're supposed to be doing because the brain is tired, the parents are tired, everybody's snappy. So in my opinion, I am very much against homework still because it falls on the shoulder of the parents. If I just take a step back to a few years ago, if we remember the COVID times and all the online school, I consider myself a fairly intelligent person, but there were some days where we had to sit and go through some of the tasks that, these grade 2 and 3 and 4s had to do. And half of the time, I didn't actually understand what they were doing because the content and what they're learning and how they're learning is for jobs and careers that possibly haven't even been, brought into our daily lives, they are being taught at a pace that we're not accustomed to. So I believe that adds more pressure and more stress onto the children because the parents aren't helping them in the way that the teachers are helping them. And I know that there are only so many hours in the day, but I believe that is why the schools need to do all the learning in class and try to focus on that. And then, yes, a project here or there, that sort of a thing. But we're finding children have projects during school holidays. They've got to prepare for upcoming orals, and holidays are there for them to reboot.
Yeah. All right, well, we're about to wrap things up. I want to come back to you, Professor. As an educational psychologist, perhaps you can unpack to us what is most important when it comes to not just children's learning, but children's development, and how do we strike a balance? Because if I tell you about when I was in school, and I know this is a rendition of many children here on the African continent, and we need to look at these contexts because it's important. I go to school with my school transport. My transport picks me up, and it was a long way from where my school is to, where home is. My school transport would then had to drop off all these different kids, and I'll get home around 4 p.m. perhaps. And some kids who school in rural areas have to walk for a very long time before they get home. Once you get there, you have to eat something. Lots of children in our, African schools also only have one set of school clothes, so maybe they have to clean those clothes before they get to, the new set. And there's so many responsibilities. Parents come home only around 5, 6, 7 p.m. and there isn't a lot of time for parents to engage with children. They have to cook. They also have to help with homework. In fact, there isn't much time to do anything else except the homework. Is this a healthy way for children to engage with normal life outside of society?
There are indeed, you're correctly saying it, psychosocial, economic, social issues that indeed affect different learners in different stages and in different contexts. And we always have to take those into consideration. And schools, as an example, or as placed within a particular community, understand those contexts and those issues. However, learning and homework is one of the requirement or the demands. Let's put it in a direct way. One of the demands for one to be able to progress and not to stagnate. Playing is one of them, as well as Albert and Janine are indicating. Socializing is one of them. You, as a fully functioning individual, you need to be able to balance out, as many as they are, as stressful as they are, because of all of that, the way you deal with them, the way you are assisted to deal with all these pressures, each and every element demands its own attention, and it teaches you, as well as a growing person, how to develop and how to become a better functioning member of the society. Janine, Albert, and I agree with your slogan. What did you say? I heard now when you were advertising, curiosity knows no bounds. So for curiosity to know no bounds, it means that each and every element where curiosity is supposed to happen, it needs to be fed, it needs to be maintained, and it needs someone to pay attention to that, and homework is one of those.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much to all three of our guests today. I think all great views were happening from, all perspectives. I don't know if we'll see perhaps more schools take on a no homework policy here on the African continent. And it would be great if that were to happen, because then as parents, or guardians, one would be able to choose the direction in which they want their child to take, perhaps take them to a homework policy school or no homework policy school, according to what they think their own perspectives of these particular policies may be. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Janine, for your time. Thank you, Albert, for your time. And thank you, Professor Tabane, for your time.
Bye.
Thank you, Janine Hammond, Western Cape manager for Club Engage, Obert Masaurare, national president for the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, and Professor Ramujungwa Netabane, educational psychologist. And that's today's African View, the debate on homework. Tell us what you think about that one, and which side do you stand, homework or no homework? At Channel Africa 1, thank you to all of you who are also part of our live stream. We see you in Tlantla Zondo Fendi watching us on Facebook. We also see you, Vusi Sibeko Koka, who says, good morning, everybody, and thank you so much. He says, good morning, my people. Good morning to you, Vusi, as well, listening to us from Tsakane Brakpan. Thank you so much for joining our live stream there. It's 9:58 Central Africa time. Let's take a break.
You give me life, it is solar. Can't feel love.
People. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there. SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Looking at your top stories, former Gabonese Army General Brice Nguema, formally sworn in as Gabon president, and Houthis in Yemen say they will launch more attacks on Israeli airports. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. The former Gabonese Army General Brice Nguema has been formally sworn in as Gabon's president, marking the end of a 19-month transitional period under military rule as the country returns to constitutional governance. Nguema first rose to power in August 2023 when he led a coup that toppled Ali Bongo Dimba, ending the Bongo family's 56-year hold on the presidency and installing himself as head of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions. In the country's April 12 election, the first since the coup, he secured an overwhelming mandate, winning with nearly 95% of the vote against 7 challengers, a result ratified by Gabon's Constitutional Court on April 25. African Affairs analyst Jean Boissa explains.
I do think that Nguema is linked to the Bongo family in terms of bloodline. This was prepared in such a way that their influence will still continue in Gabon. And I do believe at that moment, with the network of the Bongo family, the population hasn't yet understood that this is the age of the Aquarius, and it is the time where we need to find societal progress and the evolution of humanity in such a way that instead of having 60% of unemployment in the rural area, we could transform. And that is what the former prime minister was campaigning for.
South African National Defence Force says an agreement was reached with the M23 rebels in the Eastern DRC that all troops and their equipment will be withdrawn unconditionally and will be in the country by the end of May. South Africa's Defence and Military Veterans Minister, Enji Motshekga, alongside South African National Defence Force generals, told a media briefing in the capital Pretoria yesterday that the movement on road from Goma via Rwanda to Tanzania has started. In March, SADC leaders held a virtual meeting where they decided to withdraw the troops to allow the warring parties to have an inclusive dialogue.
The financing of SEMI-DRC comes from the 16 countries that make SADC. From there, when they've worked out the figures, they'll tell us what is supposed to be our contribution as a country based on the 16 countries' contributions, which are determined with a different formula. So we'll still get our figure from the SADC Secretariat.
The High Court in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province is today expected to call its first witness in the reopened inquest into the death of the African National Congress leader, Chief Albert Luthuli, in 1967. The original apartheid-era inquest had ruled that a train had accidentally knocked him down. In its opening argument, the state told the High Court that experts examined the medical evidence and also took part in the reconstruction of the scene. Advocate Ncedile Dunywa says the aim was to highlight the contradictions between the medical and scientific evidence and testimony in the original inquest. The month of May is recognized as Africa Month, a time to celebrate the continent's vibrant culture, heritage, and the founding of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, now the African Union. Observed annually on the 25th of May, this year's African Month is being celebrated under the theme United in Resilience for the Defense of Our Freedom and Democracy. The national spokesperson for the Ember Kingdom Royal House, Sthembiso Msomi, elaborates.
So without economic independence, political freedom still remains vulnerable to external influences. If you can see, African nations should strengthen intracontinental trade through initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area. Unity must be driven by cultural preservation. Our languages actually identifies who we are as Africans. Indigenous knowledge systems should also be restored, which also identifies our heritage. And the traditional governance structures through indigenous leadership also need to be embedded in policy making to safeguard our identity.
And lastly, the Houthis in Yemen say they will launch more attacks on Israeli airports. This follows Israel's plan to expand its military operations in Gaza. The Houthis also say they will work to impose a comprehensive air blockade on Israel. They have advised airlines to cancel flights to Israeli airports. The Houthis fired missiles at the edge of Ben Gurion Airport near Tel Aviv yesterday. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to strike back.
We will not tolerate it. We will take very strong action against them. And we always remember that they act with their patron Iran's direction and support. We'll do what we need to do to take care of our security, to respond effectively, and to give Iran a due warning that this cannot continue.
Now recapping on your top stories, former Gabonese Army General Bryce Nguema has been formally sworn in as Gabon's president, marking the end of a 19-month transitional period under military rule as the country returns to constitutional governance. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
All right, it's 6 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African time. What's your take on our debate? Is homework something that you think is still relevant in today's schooling or education system? That was our debate in the African View. We had different views from our guests there. I think Janine won it for me in that one. I've never actually had an overriding argument. I think hers actually was a dominating theme. She brought kind of views that leaned towards her direction and forced the other two guests to actually moderate their views towards her ideas. But do you think homework is something that should continue, or are you of the view as Janine Hammond from the Western Cape's Club Engage, who says, look, we need to spend more time with the kids outside of tasks and educational material. We need to bond with them. They need off-time education because sometimes they're just swamped with too much work? Or are you with the other guests saying, you know what, homework actually brings focus and discipline to a child. It enables them to actually complete tasks after they've been given to them, and it also gives them that independence in doing so. So give us your thoughts on our WhatsApp number +2763 406 9126. You can text us or voice note us there. We'd love to hear from you. If you're listening to us on our live stream, you can also just give us your thoughts on that conversation. Do you think homework is a must, or do you think times are changing and we need to just spend more time with these young ones in our homes? Give us your thoughts on that live stream as well.
Yeah, we're definitely keeping things moving. In this hour of the show, we're speaking about feminism. Yeah, that is a word that really strikes a different thought in different people. And we all have different views of what this exactly is. But what does it mean to call yourself a feminist in today's world? That's the question we are exploring in this hour of the show. We'll be speaking to Kata Mina, a feminist and educator from Sierra Leone, who will be helping us explore the range of topics central to feminism, as well as a feminist leadership and activism in this hour of the show. Then we wrap it up with our fitness and nutrition corner, speaking about the importance of indigenous African food. So that's going to be a great one as well. At Channel Africa 1, as Benjamin said, join our live streams there. We see you guys who are, watching our live stream, but we'd love to see you comment as well. Be a part of the conversations of the day and let us know where you are listening to us from in the African continent and the world over. +2763 406 9126. That's our WhatsApp line and direct line. Let's make the Channel Africa circle bigger. Like, share, and of course subscribe to all our channels so we can see you there. It's 10 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. This is the second hour of On the Move.
Annika Longi sur Channel Africa.
Nous étions en train de savourer la chanson Démocratie.
Démocratie.
Ça veut dire quoi?
Démocratie, déjà, ça dérive de démocratie, qui est le régime dans lequel nous sommes, dans notre pays. Mais j'ai plutôt pensé que nous sommes plutôt dans une démocratie.
Pourquoi?
Où il y a une cruauté tellement... une méchanceté des dirigeants envers la population. En fait, dans cette chanson, je suis en train de blâmer tout le monde. Je blâme et les dirigeants, qui pour moi sont des démocrates.
Oh, je suis maintenant en train de comprendre. Donc, démocratie. Oh
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
Ritmos e cultura com o embaixador da música africana e lusófona Jacob Wakantivani.
Mombali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala mbona wewe mombali nanga
tem sentido tanto a sua falta e do ritmo de cultura onde você esteve, meu querido embaixador.
É 2025 e o embaixador da música africana e lusófona Jacob Wakantivani traz todas as entrevistas com os músicos africanos e lusófonos para a melhor dança, entrevistas e entretenimento. Não perca! Todos os domingos, das 20 às 21 horas de Johannesburg, aqui no Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Keeping you on the know and on the move.
Some years ago, I read a very beautiful book by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie titled "We Should All Be Feminists." A very, very confronting phrase, isn't it, of that particular book that imposes we should all be feminists. And many Africans really wonder about that phrase or that term feminist. And I want to quote you what she says in this book. Some people ask, why the word feminist? Why not just say you are a believer in human rights or something like that? But this is what Chimamanda asks us to that questions, because that would be dishonest, because she says feminism is of course part of human rights in general, but to choose to use the vague expression human rights is to deny the specific and particular problem of gender. It would be a way of pretending that it was not women who have for centuries been excluded. It would be a way of denying that the problem of gender targets women. But then again, what is this feminism that everyone is talking about, and how do we adapt to it in the African context? That's the question that we are navigating today. How do we navigate that identity in spaces that doesn't always welcome it? And what qualities distinguish feminist leaders? To speak on this, we're joined by Kata Mina, a feminist and educator from Sierra Leone. Kata facilitates women empowerment, training women-led organizations in countries such as Liberia as well, and also is involved in feminist leadership and activism. Thank you, Kata, for joining us here on Channel Africa.
For having me. Good morning from Sierra Leone.
Well, feminism is a very much of a term that has taken hold and seems to have been turned upside down in many ways. At times it is dealt with in integrity in how many Africans are adopting feminism, but in many parts of our African societies, it's very much misunderstood.
Yeah. And I like the quotes that you started with from Chimamanda. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You're very clear. Sure.
Okay. I like the quote she started with from Chimamanda talking about human rights and feminism. And like you said, in most African cultures, I think now it's a little bit better. People are warming up to what it means to be feminist. But I think what we try to do and the work that I try to do with women, working with women's rights organization, is connecting the work that you do to the politics of what it means to do a feminist work. So feminism is basically dismantling and disrupting systems of oppression, right? And most of the work we do is, we're centered around women's rights, which is also part of dismantling the system. So instead of individual women's rights, is also saying, what do we do to ensure that when we have an individual women's right, the entire system then becomes dismantled to ensure that we're not fighting for individual women, we're fighting for a system that supports everybody. So that's the politics of what it means to be feminist. And a lot of women already do this work in different ways, in various ways. They just, because the word feminism, like you say, sometimes, it becomes, people think it's white, it's elite. It's not. There's so many literature that shows that African feminism has its roots in Africa and is rooted in the work that we do here in Africa and in the ways that we do it in Africa.
You know, Kata, there are various ways why the word feminist has raised brows in many societies, because there's so many people who have sort of spread the message that feminism is anti-men, when most of the time feminism is just pro-women or for women. Let's speak about that. Why do you think that the word feminism is raising so many brows and has gotten quite a lot of negative feedback in today's society and in many societies that we live in?
Right. I very interesting. This always comes up when you talk about feminism and they say, oh, it's the movement against men.
Yes.
But I think the misconception is that they have taken men to be the standard, and that's the problem, because feminism is not about the standard of men. It's about the system that allows male domination. So it's not about an individual man. It's the system of patriarchy that we live in that gives men domination over women. And sometimes this leads to women's abuses, women's sub-domination and things like that. So feminism then centers on how do we create an enabling system, an enabling environment that ensures that men, women, and other marginalized and gender expansive people have rights and can live as freely as men live in our society. So most times, because it then gives preference to the people that are on the margin and the people that have been on the margin for years, people then misconstrue and say, oh my God, this is the movement against men. But no, if the data shows that it will take us about 138 years to get to equality. So if it's taking us 138 years to get to equality, which means that we need to put more efforts into ensuring that the people who are already down can come up to reach the level of equality we're all fighting for. So I think that's where the misconception always comes from, because then it feels like this is a movement against men or this is an attack against men. No, it's understanding that the system enables a certain gender over another gender or other genders that exist.
Yeah, that's such a powerful way to see it, because we always think it's anti-masculinity when it's not. Let's go back a little bit and define what feminism is, because many people think they know what feminism is, but they're actually very misunderstanding it, because they think it's about woman power, excluding men, excluding the rest of society. It's just when women gather in conferences and it's about conferencing in itself. But I think it's deeper than that. Could you help us understand it just in a simple way, what feminism is?
Okay, so I recently just came back from Liberia, where I was facilitating feminist leadership and movement building training with the women who work there. And the Liberian Feminist Coalition under the Liberian Feminist Forum hosted this. And one of the things we did was everything that we've heard about feminism. Let's sit down as ourselves with the knowledge we have and define what it means to be a feminist for ourselves. What do you think that it means to be a feminist? And the words equality came up, the words inclusion came up, the words intersectionality came up, the words movement came up, the words fairness came up. So basically, we define feminism as not against one person, but against a system that allows another person to be dominated or to dominate another person. So we define the feminism as against patriarchy, trying to dismantle patriarchy, and ensuring that women and other gender expansive people have rights and are able to thrive and live in dignity and freedom and peace. I think for me that would be the simplest definition of what feminism will be.
Very, very helpful, Kata. We'll come back to you after this break. We're speaking to Kata Mina, who is a feminist and educator from Sierra Leone. We'll continue the conversation after our break. Stay with us right here on Channel Africa.
The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
Just the other day, I went to pick up my daughter from school, and as per usual, her friends don't usually come to my car just to say hellos and goodbyes. So this particular day, they made this comment about my jacket, saying that it's giving baddie vibes.
You say my jacket is giving what?
It's giving baddie vibes. It got got me thinking, where did the baddies come from? Because nothing is new under the sun, as it is said. I was like, oh yes, remember the Kenyan parliamentarian? Her name is Millie Odhiambo.
When you are urging me to be a good example to the girls, the younger ones who are doing their first term, Mr. Speaker, if they are good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. So do not be cheated like the African culture, where you are told have decorum, be nice. I'm telling you, you will go nowhere. Be a bad girl like me.
And I thought to myself, that is the original baddie.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et votre 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
On the Move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday.
Only on Channel Africa. #On the Move.
It's 22 minutes past 10 Central Africa time. We're still speaking about feminism. In fact, when packing the question, what does it mean to call yourself a feminist in today's world? Still speaking to feminist and educator from Sierra Leone who facilitated a women empowerment training women-led organization in Liberia. She also explores topics central to feminist leadership and activism. That is Kata Mina, who continues to chat to us this morning. Thank you for staying with us, Kata. Let's speak about, feminist movements or feminism in policy, because that's one of the reasons that many people say that feminism is anti-men or anti-boys. These days, we're hearing a lot of conversations saying the boy child is being left behind. You spoke earlier that women in society are about 180 years behind when it comes to equality. So when all these policies and movements come into play to try and uphold or, bring forward the girl child, to try and bring equality into various sectors of society, are these, making that, issue of anti-men or boy children being left behind, bringing that to the forefront as well? Chat to me a little bit about feminist movements, feminist policies, and what their actual, why they're there and what they are there to serve, the purpose they're there to serve.
Okay, thank you very much. I think as I said, the equality statistics is 138, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
And I think as Africans, if we look at most of our laws we're only now changing some of these laws to reflect the realities of not just women, but our present reality. So a lot of the laws, a lot of policies, work that feminist movements advocate for is changing existing laws that have excluded women in politics, that have excluded women in education, that have excluded women in work. And so many of these laws are really archaic, right? So when it comes to policies and feminist movements, it's really censoring those policies. For example, there are some countries that rape is not part of the law, right? The word rape is not defined in the law. And some countries have advanced to include rape as a definition. This is all because of the work done by feminist movement. But I want to speak a little bit on the exclusion of the perceived exclusion of boys and men in the movement. And I say this all the time. I said the only reason why we have feminist movements, the only reason why I am here, or a lot of us are here as women, is because women before us had experiences that they did not want other women to experience. So what they did is they made a conscious effort to ensure that if I've experienced this, how am I going to change this? And I always say this to men, and men who are allies and who are feminists. I said, this is upon you to also see that there's so many women coming together based on their lived experience to move and pull a change. So if you as a man have understood what it means to be a man in this society, you have understood what it means to have privilege, it's also on you to come back and talk to boys because they need it. They need spaces where they're also safe to sit down and express themselves and talk to you, and to also then break down what it means to be toxic, what toxic masculinity is. And then we have boys who are then, who are then strong enough to be vulnerable, who are then strong enough to cry, who are then strong enough because they see an example of other men doing it. So this is always my how I always say to men, I'm like, it's on you to also come with us. This is all of us doing it to ensure that all of us have equality because it helps every one of us. But it's on you to come to boys. It's on you to speak to boys. It's on you to mentor boys. Do not leave the boys behind. But women are trying to change their reality. That's going to take them so many years to change. They have to then give preference to what the reality is when they're doing all of these changes. So this is why we need allies. We need men to stand up, to be part of this movement, to also take the mantle and change some of these policies and laws and take boys along with them.
And I love the fact that you use that phrase because I guess there's a misconception that feminism is only for women, whereas feminism is for people who believe in the equality of all genders. Let's speak about what that looks like, to be man and to be an ally and to be a man and to be a feminist. What is that and what does that, manifest itself like?
Yeah, there's always the people that say men cannot be feminists, there are people that say men are just allies. Wherever you sit on that argument, for me, it's always, if as a man, you understand that the system of patriarchy gives you domination, you know what it means, you understand what your privileges are in the system, you question your privileges in the system, and then you also use your privilege to ensure that there's a change. That is what it means to be a man, to be a feminist, to be in the movements. Then you know that if I enter this room as a man, I'm the only person they're going to give, like, for example, a room to speak. And I will come in that room as a man that know that this is something that easily comes to me. How do I then say we need more women in this room? How do I use this privilege to ensure that women are also in this room and other genders are in this room to have this conversation? So that is what it means. Like, you understand the privilege that patriarchy gives you, and you try to question that privilege and then use that privilege to instill change in the system.
I love that because it brings in the notion that essentially everybody can be a feminist, and feminism is not a dark sort of, angry, violent way to jolt men out of the picture and put women on a pedestal, but really a system, in small ways and big ways to bring equality, gender equality to our societies, our communities, and our various spaces. Before we wrap up, Qatar, tell us a little bit more about the work that you do in just a minute.
Okay, thank you. So I am a feminist activist. My work is centered around working with women and girl-led groups in communities where they're leading change and ending violence against women, violence from rape, violence to female genital mutilation, and those sort of violences, and also ensuring that we have policies and laws that enable all the work that is being done at community level to be, centered around the national level. So I also do a lot of trainings. I also do a lot of engagements with young people, and I volunteer as a lecturer at the University of Sierra Leone under the gender department. So that's, in a nutshell, the work that I do.
Thank you so much, Kata, for your time. A really great way to learn and to get educated around feminism. We appreciate it this morning.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
That's feminist and educator Kata Mina telling us a little bit more about what it means to be a feminist in today's society. And whether you are a woman or a man or any other gender in society, you can be an ally and you can be a feminist. It's 10:30 Central Africa time. Once again, let's get Musibudi Makura for our latest sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. We'll start here. Ethiopian Tella Negusi won the Belfast Marathon in a new event record of about 2 hours, 13 minutes and 37 seconds after dominating the race. Now, the athlete's winning time cut 4 seconds off the previous race record set by his compatriot Negewo Rarisa back in 2012. So the Ethiopian was well ahead of the field by the end of the first mile as his only company was a couple of early marathon relay competitors. The previous event record of 2 hours, 13 minutes and 41 seconds set 13 years ago by his compatriot Alarisa didn't look under threat as Negusi reached the halfway mark in 1 hour, 8 minutes and 40 seconds. Meanwhile, Kenya's Millicent Kibet took victory in the women's race in a time of 2 hours, 38 minutes and 30 seconds, which was more than the 3 minutes outside of the record set by another Kenyan, Beatrice Jipkema, back in 2024. On to football news now. The Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations tournament currently underway in Egypt has been rocked by allegations of age cheating, and some coaches have started airing their voices, saying enough is enough. Now, first to raise his concerns was Tanzanian head coach Habne Suleiman, complaining just about the ages of the Sierra Leone players, saying they are not under-20 players. The Tanzanian team had lost to Sierra Leone 1-0 in Ismailia, and the West Africans making their debut in this year's tournament became the first team to qualify for the quarterfinals.
These are local players. Most of them, they are playing the second division or first division, comparing to even this team that Sierra Leone. If you see them, they are a little bit bigger than age-wise. It's not under 20 if you see. But we put more effort now to build up this young program, youth program, so that in the future we come up with a good and strong side.
Now, age cheating in African football has long become a serious concern, and the Confederation of African Football looks to have won the fight when it introduced the MRI scans. But this can only work up to the under-17 boys level and not beyond that. Zambia under-20 coach Boyd Mulandwa says the cancer of age cheating can damage the game as well as the players.
But on our side, it's just to encourage the boys to keep on fighting. It's a youth tournament. We expect youth to be playing against youths, but if you bring people who are not in that category, it becomes difficult for others. And others, they just get intimidated by just looking at someone. You can tell that this guy is older than me, and it's going to be difficult for me to challenge him. That is the message that I can just say.
On to rugby news now. A group of 38 players assembled in Cape Town on Sunday for the next phase of the Springbok Women's Rugby World Cup preparations, with the Rugby Africa Women's Cup in Madagascar in early June. The first assignment for the group, followed by test matches against Canada a month later. So Springbok women performance coach Suez de Bruin invited 47 players to the 2-week camp, with 9 players who are currently in Los Angeles with the Springbok Women's Sevens joining the squad only this coming weekend. So the first week of camp will be in Newlands in Cape Town, and the second at the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport. That's from the 9th until the 16th of May. A group of 28 will then travel to the Rugby Africa event, while the group of senior players will remain at the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport for that time. And finally, Norway's Casper Ruud won his first Masters 1000 title on Sunday as he stormed to a 7-5, 3-6, 6-4 victory over 5th seed Jack Draper in the Madrid Open final, following a gutsy performance that showcased his clay court mettle. The 26-year-old, seeded 14th, playing in his 18th clay court final, overcame both a rib injury sustained in the semi-final as well as a resilient Draper to secure the trophy that after previously dispatching the likes of Taylor Fritz, Daniel Medvedev as well as Francesco Cerundolo. Now, Ruud had previously reached 3 Grand Slam finals, including 2 at Roland Garros, as well as the Masters 1000 final in Miami back in 2022, as well as the Monte Carlo Masters final in 2024. That concludes your sports news this hour. Back with a final sports update for the morning in the third and final hour of On the Move. For any sports stories that you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move.
Thank you, Musibudi Makura. We have now Chandu Koligege giving us our latest business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Benjamin and Palesa. Good morning. A team of officials from the International Monetary Fund will visit Angola this week as the country edges closer to a new loan deal with the lender due to pressure following the slide in crude oil prices. Angola, which is sub-Saharan Africa's second biggest crude oil exporter, had to pay $200 million last month after JP Morgan demanded more security for its total return swap, a loan backed by Angola's dollar bonds. The IMF did not immediately provide more details on the mission to Angola and the expected outcomes. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has given the assurance that government will continue to correct the imbalances of the past in the workplace. This follows the Democratic Alliance's High Court challenge against the Employment Equity Act. The party argues the legislation's race-based employment quotas could exclude countless South Africans from job opportunities. Reflecting on the country's progress in advancing workers' rights since 1994, Ramaphosa says there are still challenges including racial inequality in top management, non-compliance and a lack of protection for informal workers. Some labor law experts in South Africa say the Labor Relations Act can be used to determine whether requiring employees to return to the office is lawful. This as the number of people working from home increases. However, many South African employers are now reconsidering their policies and requesting employees to return to the office. Yvonne Mgefa is a labor law expert.
While there is no specific piece of legislation, but the contract of employment would state where an employee could work. When something is contained in your contract of employment, that affords rights for the employer and the employee equally. So if your contract of employment states expressly that you can work, or your place of work is remote, you can work from home or anywhere else in the world, then before the employer can actually require you to return to the office, they need to engage you, either in the form of consultation or negotiation.
Sweden-based company Volvo Cars says it sold 58,881 cars in April, down 11% from a year earlier. In a statement, Volvo Cars, which is majority owned by China's Geely, says sales of fully electric cars fell 32% to account for 20% of total sales volumes. Shares in the company were down 2% in early trade. Ratings agencies S&P Global has reported that the Russian manufacturing sector saw a slight easing in its downturn in April, with contraction in both output and new orders showing to a marginal pace. The Purchasing Managers Index PMI for Russia's manufacturing sector rose to 49.3 last month from 48.2 in March, marking a second consecutive monthly decline, but at a slower rate. A PMI reading below 50.0 signals contraction, while above 50.0 indicates growth. Now let's shift our focus to morning financial indicators. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 603, in Botswana 13 pula 50. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling to 89, Zambia 27 kwacha 78. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 65, Russia 82 rubles 57, India 84 rupees 57, China 71.21, South Africa $1 is at 18 rand 35. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound, 88 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,257, platinum at $957 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $59.10 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Zilipendwa na I am Henry Shekif.
Baiter, mambo vipi?
Poa.
Mwaka 2025 mpaka hivi sasa ukoje kwa upande wako mzee baba?
Kabisa, kwa sababu tumejiandaa vizuri. Kama mwaka jana tumefunga vizuri na Septemba, mwaka huu tumefungua vizuri na
hatari sana. Mzee umejipanga, utaki kutupumzisha?
Maana mwanzo alikuwa analalamika sana, you spend long time without releasing songs blah blah. Now I need to
back to back. Platform, mambo vipi?
Mambo poa kabisa, wanasemaje uko ese?
Yani huku kuna shangwe, yani la kufa mtu, sikwambie mtu babu.
Hii ni mara yangu ya kwanza pia kusikika kwa pande hizo za South Africa.
Karibu sana, unajisikiaje?
Na furaha kubwa sana kwa sababu ni mara yangu ya kwanza, na I hope watu watakuwa wananisikiliza, watu wengi pia. Ili uweze kuvuka nje, watu waweze kukufahamu, tuseme West hivi na nchi tofauti, ni lazima pia uanze kufanya vizuri hapa nyumbani, then uvuke East Africa. After East Africa,
Zilipendwa hapa kwenye Channel Africa, taswira ya Afrika.
The rhythm of Africa, the pulse of the continent. This is Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Hold be stuck. Double okay. Le général Dangote, le grand Mobao, Mama Dangote,
Through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph, not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story. A living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging pan-African
here on Channel Africa. Well, it's time to check out what's been happening on TikTok. And you know when you were younger, right? You'd look up to adults and you think, yeah, one day I'm going to be like that. Because when you're younger, we really cannot wait to grow up.
Yeah.
Right? And because of that, we think, oh yeah, being an adult is so cool. You get to drive a car, you get to make money and go to work. You think it's about having freedom, money, and the right to do whatever you want. This is until you actually become an adult. Mm-hmm. And then you realize that actually, I made a mistake. I think I want to go back to being a child, because when you finally become an adult, you realize that there's a lot of positive, but there's also negative things that happen to us as adults on a daily basis. And this experience has sparked a word that is used quite a lot now on social media that is coined adulting. And when you are adulting, you're doing all these hard, difficult, all these not so fun things that adults do on a daily basis. So I found a TikToker called by the username @MilkyTran, and she does something quite fun in a very quirky way. She documents 3 things that happen to her as an adult every week. And sometimes her insights can be quirky, dramatic, fun, and sometimes a little crazy, that really shows some of the things that happen to us as adults on a daily basis.
Wouldn't it be torturous listening to someone talking about adulting, because we're reminded about our own adulting?
Yeah, well, it reminds us that, hey, look, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that's going through some of the things that happen to us, and I am not alone. Let's listen to this one.
3 adult things that happened to me this week as an adult. 1. I'm an extroverted introvert, meaning when my social battery dies in 2 hours, you need to leave. So to get my friend to leave, I tried cleaning up, get drunk at your own house, changing the lighting, use the lights in your own house, and getting ready for bed. Until I finally said, if you love me, you leave. It worked. Honesty rocks. 2. Someone stole my side mirror cover. You bastards. So to save some money, I went on eBay and bought an exact replacement. And just like my head in most hats, it didn't fit. Okay. So I brought it to an auto shop and he just taped it on like with normal tape. I guess that's fine. 3. I got my first brand deal with Kava. You go, girl. Thank you guys so much. So I pitched them the Milky Bowl. It sounds delicious. Imagine a pile of edible flowers topped with Korean fried chicken wings, a side of pho broth, and my secret ingredient, self-compassion, and ranch. And that's when Kava reminded me that they're a Mediterranean restaurant. Damn. But everyone is welcome at their table. I tried. This is the ad. Bonus! Ducky hid my birth control.
Yo, it sounds like you, Pali. Sounds like your life.
Not me. My life can also be quite dramatic. But that's the thing, right? It gets you thinking. If you were to think about your life in a quirky way like Milky Tran does, what are some of the things that happen in your week that you'd find, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I actually have to go through all of those things just because I'm an adult.
Shame, man. She seems like she's going through a lot.
Sometimes she does. But sometimes she gets some really beautiful experiences and she just reminds us maybe to look inside and say, look, you're not alone, because some of these experiences are ones that probably many adults are going through on a daily
What's up
basis.
with her voice, though? She sounds so robotic or like very Barbie.
She sounds a little bit Barbie-ish, yeah, but I think she's just trying to showcase her own personality.
Okay.
I mean, she's got that youthfulness, that slight quirky thing about her. But even if you're quirky and even if you feel like a Barbie, you still have to adult.
You just sound like Mildred Trent, just a little bit there.
You still have to adult. Well, let's hear some of her other experiences that she goes through in a week as an adult.
3 adult things that happened to me this week as an adult. 1. I went to my best friend's hot yoga class. It's like yoga in hell. And because he knew my name, he gave me special attention. I literally have never looked worse. It was such a good workout that I threw up and swallowed it. Beast mode. Namaste. 2. I needed more overhead lighting, so I bought this cool floating candle set. I love being whimsical. And when my friend saw them, he asked if I was a die-hard Harry Potter adult. What did you just call me? If it was Harry Potter merch, would the remote look like this? I thought it was like that because when you turn them on, it's like magic. Okay. 3. One of my gigs got canceled and I really needed the money. So that day I ended up just doom scrolling and filling my head with brain rot and continuously upsetting news about the country. And so I moved from my small screen to my big screen to go watch some upsetting entertainment instead, and thought about how tax season is coming. Pay off my credit card, book a vision, pay my car insurance, my rent got raised. My flowers finally bloomed. I've been thinking lately that a guarantee in life is nothing lasts forever. No job, money comes and goes, and even the people we love most in our lives. And that is a lot to grieve. But it's also why I'm hopeful. Whatever you're dealing with, it won't last forever.
I love that because, you know, even through all her quirkiness and her whimsical nature, she also is like, yeah, all these things happen in my life, but also I had to think about all these things that I need to grieve in life. So it also reminds you to take a brief moment to remind yourself to take care of your mental wellness.
That voice was torture, though.
Yeah, no, I actually love it. I don't think it's torture. I love it. And I love Milky Tran. Well, let us know, what are some of the things that happen in your week when you're like, you know what? I really shouldn't have wished to be an adult too soon. Take me back to being a kid, because that's where it's really at. And maybe to all the kids listening out there, there's nothing to really rush for. Enjoy being a kid. It's much better on that side than that on the side of adulting. Well, that's today's TikTok feature. Let us know what you think about that on our TikTok. We are at Channel Africa 1. And of course, join our live stream on Facebook, Channel Africa, on Instagram and YouTube at Channel Africa 1. It's 10:53 Central Africa time.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation. African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform.
Is Stralabami, internationally very well known, that one with Burna Boy Hangout with the South African boys Tito M and UP. That is also featuring SNE there in that particular remix. It's 57 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African time. You are listening to us on DSTV channel 802, OpenView 628. Remember, on www.channelafrica.co.za is also another way to listen to us, including that SABC Plus payment. We're going to be looking at food, and I've been kind of trying to find some ways to get better nutrition here. And indigenous foods are very difficult to actually find in mainstream kind of places. I don't know about you, Bali, but I'm struggling. All the stuff that I'm finding is pretty much Western, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
your corn feels like it's Western.
Yeah.
All this, and I've noticed in our grocery stores, I don't know if our vegetables are getting more and more limited.
Yeah,
or is
absolutely.
it seasonal?
Well, it's seasonal, but there is a lot of limit.
It feels like my choices for making supper are also like very limited these days. So we're going to be speaking about that. How Africa has contributed immensely in supplying indigenous plants for food and for medicine. We're going to be speaking to a guest to explore nutritional and healing treasures that lie within the continent's varied ecosystems. We'll find out more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay with us in the next hour of the show as we speak indigenous food. And that's an interesting one, because many of the food that we eat, even though the food that we call our traditional food is actually not indigenous, many times to our own region. So that could be quite interesting to unpack as well. Continue joining our live stream. Of course, we see you there on our live stream on Facebook, Channel Africa. Find us there, and on Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on YouTube at Channel Africa 1 as well. Don't forget, if you missed some of the conversations we've had already, go to our website, www.channelafrica.co.za. Keep listening. I'll let you know exactly where to find those podcasts right there on our website. And it's a great way to also continually engage with the show, even when we are off air, and of course when you're listening to other things in between, other shows here on Channel Africa. So yes, at Channel Africa 1, let's engage together. Let's hear your voice as well. We love to hear from you on +27 63 406 9126. We're on WhatsApp, and that's also our direct line. So let's make the Channel Africa circle bigger. Let's go into that conversation on indigenous African food in the next hour. But for now, Onele Nzinzi is back with our latest news update.
Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go. Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week. SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Looking at your top stories, the former Gabonese Army General
Brice Ngouema is formally sworn in as Gabon president, and Houthis in Yemen say they will launch attacks on Israeli airports. Your latest news. Greetings to our listeners. Human rights defenders believe the election of Brice Ngouema as Gabon's president may not take away the network of the Bongo family dynasty. The former Gabonese army general was formally sworn in as the country's president on Saturday, marking the end of a 19-month transitional period under military rule. This as the country returns to constitutional governance. Ngouema first rose to power in August 2023 when he led a coup that toppled Ali Bongo Ondimba, ending the Bongo family's 56-year hold on the presidency and installing himself as head of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions. Ngouema is linked to the Bongo family in terms of bloodline. Political commentator Jean Boissa explains.
I do think that Ngouema is linked to the Bongo family in terms of bloodline. This was prepared in such a way that their influence will still continue in Gabon. And I do believe at that moment, with the network of the Bongo family, the population hasn't yet understood that this is the age of the Aquarius, and it is the time where we need to find societal progress and the evolution of humanity in such a way that instead of having 60% of unemployment in the rural area, we could transform. And that is what the former Prime Minister was campaigning for.
South African National Defence Force says an agreement was reached with the M23 rebels in the Eastern DRC that all troops and their equipment will be withdrawn unconditionally and will be in the country by the end of May. South Africa's Defence and Military Veterans Minister Angie Motshekga, alongside the South African National Defence Force generals, told media briefing in the capital Pretoria yesterday that the movement on roads and Goma via Rwanda to Tanzania has started. In March, SADC leaders held a virtual meeting where they decided to withdraw the troops to allow the warring parties to have an inclusive dialogue. South African National Defence Force Chief General Rudzani Maphanya explains.
The rest of South Africans, the rest of SADC members will move out of Sake and Goma, and they will disperse from the assembly area which is in Tanzania.
The High Court in Pietermaritzburg in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province is today expected to call its first witness in the reopening inquest into the death of African National Congress leader Chief Albert Luthuli in 1967. The original apartheid-era inquest had ruled that a train had accidentally knocked him down. In its opening argument, the state told the High Court that experts examined the medical evidence and also took part in the reconstruction of the scene. Advocate Ncedile Dunywa says the aim was to highlight the contradictions between the medical and scientific evidence and testimony in the original inquest. The month of May is recognized as Africa Month, a time to celebrate the continent's vibrant culture, heritage, and the founding of the Organization of African Unity in 1963, now the African Union. Observed annually on the 25th of May, this year's African Month is being celebrated under the theme United in Resilience for the Defense of Our Freedom and Democracy. The national spokesperson of the Embo Kingdom Royal House, Thembi Somsomi, explains.
So without economic independence, political freedom still remains vulnerable to external influences. If you can see, African nations should strengthen intracontinental trade through initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area. Unity must be driven by cultural preservation. Our languages actually identifies who we are as Africans. Indigenous knowledge systems should also be restored, which also identifies our heritage. And the traditional governance structures through indigenous leadership also need to be embedded in policy making to safeguard our identity.
And lastly, the Houthis in Yemen have responded to Israel's new plans for Gaza, saying they will impose an air blockade on Israel by repeatedly targeting its airports. The group warned airlines to cancel flights to Israeli airports. Yesterday, a missile fired by a group landed near the Ben Gurion airport. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised to hit back. The BBC's Mohammed Taha has the latest.
Most of the flights that are planned to depart from Ben Gurion Airport were cancelled. The Houthis said they will impose what they called as airspace ban on Israel. They said before they were imposing a maritime ban on Israel in the Red Sea, and now they said they will extend that to the airspace. We will see in the coming hours if these flights will manage to depart or not.
Now, recapping on your top stories, human rights defenders believe the election of Brice Ngouema as Gabon's president may not take away the network of the Bongo family dynasty. The former Gabonese army general was formally sworn in as the country's president on Saturday, marking an end to a 19-month transitional period under military rule. This as the country returns to constitutional governance. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
All right, we're in the third hour of On the Move right here on Channel Africa. You're still listening to me, Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama, hanging out with you right here on Channel Africa. We're here at the SABC studio. Download that and listen to Channel Africa under the radio section. Find us on your audio bouquets, DSTV channel 802 and OpenView HD channel 628, and of course our website www.channelafrica.co.za. Click on the programs tab on our homepage, navigate your way through the various shows here on Channel Africa, and find the show On the Move. That is where you can find our podcast. So if you've missed the conversations we've had so far and much other highlight conversations that we've had, you can find them right over there. We're going into our fitness and nutrition conversations in this hour of the show, and Africa has contributed immensely in supplying indigenous plants and food for medicine, and the continent boasts a wealth of natural resources, but it seems like they have become hidden treasures, as where we usually get our food and supplies in the grocery stores, we've literally lost most of our indigenous foods in our pantries and our fridges. So we'll be exploring some of the nutritional and healing treasures that lie within the continent's varied ecosystems, and we'll be chatting in this hour of the show to Mbali Mapoli, registered dietitian, chatting to us about nutritious indigenous African food.
Hey man, you never miss out here on Channel Africa. We always make sure that you are well informed, but also that you can catch up with us. At times you can't be listening to us because sometimes your day is a little bit busy, but you can definitely always catch up. So all you have to do is check out our podcasts on our website. Go to www.channelafrica.co.za, and it's that simple. You arrive there on our website, and as soon as you get on our landing page, you'll see programs right at the top of our labels there. Click on programs and it will take you to our podcast. That way you can catch up on the move content, and also the plethora of other great content that we have from our other language services here on Channel Africa. So www.channelafrica.co.za is where you can find our podcasts, and you can stream us anytime on the SABC Plus app. You can find it also on your internet and you can actually just log in and you can listen to Channel Africa anytime. That's the SABC Plus app. Well, let's get into this conversation. Speaking about nutrition, speaking about wellness, well, I need to get into this one because I'm a little bit flu. There's a lot of people who are flu this time in Johannesburg, South Africa, where we're broadcasting from. So I'm looking forward to how do we go back to the indigenous foods to get well again.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +27 63 406 9126 and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk. It's your chance to air your views, share your opinion, engage with the community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama.
It's 11:11 Central Africa time. Of course, you tuned in to Channel Africa. We're going into our food, fitness and nutrition corner here on the Move. And you know what? We're speaking about food. And usually when you think about food, in fact, if you're home right now or when you get home later, open your cupboards, open your pantry, open your fridge. Look what's in there. Look at what you and your family are eating. Are there any African indigenous food in there? I'll wait. You'll let me know if you'll find anything. Africa has contributed immensely in supplying indigenous plants for food and medicine, and the continent does boast a wealth of natural resources, and among its hidden treasures are a myriad of superfoods and other medicinal plants that have been integral in traditional practices for centuries. However, these foods have been overlooked for years, but are now becoming more popular as experts shed more light on their benefits. We explore some of the nutritional and healing treasures that lie within the continent's varied ecosystems, and we have with us on the line Mbali Mapodi, registered dietitian, to chat to us about our incredible indigenous food. Mbali, thank you so much for your time. Let's chat a little bit about what the word indigenous food actually means.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning. So basically the term indigenous foods, obviously we're talking about foods that are of our land, foods that are native to our land, foods that are, some people will say, originate from our land. And those foods generally are supported by our climate, but also they tend to be foods that over time have been proven to help us support our health based on our demographic as Africans. And funny though, because people don't really realize this, that the land that we live in produces foods that will have the people of the land to live well. So things like whether it's we speaking moringa, other people will speak of umshonyane, whatever the herb, whatever the food item that comes from our land as Africans is meant to help us. So that's what we're speaking about when we're speaking about indigenous foods, foods that belong to our land. Yeah.
It seems like there's a big divide or a big misconception when it comes to what our indigenous food is versus what our traditional food is, because there are foods that are part of our staples all across the African continent that aren't particularly indigenous to Africa and were brought into Africa, but we somehow think they are indigenous because we've made them our traditional foods. Let's identify what those foods are and how we interact with that particular conversation.
That's a very good discourse because it just makes us be more aware of the food items. I'm going to make an example with maize. That maize is not indigenously from, it's not our indigenous food. It's not indigenous, like originated from Africa. It came as means to solve food insecurity, and then later became a major staple. Whether it's you speak in Bap or Nsanza or Nsima, it's made out of maize meal, and it became a sort of a solution to food insecurity, and then became part of our traditional foods moving forward. But it was not originally from here. And so from the point of nutrition and health, bringing these foods into Africa has always been beneficial because it has helped us, especially during times of whether it's drought or floods, when there were problems in terms of our climate. Bringing such crops that were more resistant to drought helped a lot, and then we adopted those foods and became, part of what we consume. So it's not necessarily to say that the new version of foods that came, whether some are genetically modified. For example, the orange flesh sweet potato was not originally a thing until they added beta-carotene to improve vitamin A. It doesn't mean necessarily that those are bad foods, but it just means they came in or they were brought in or as means to help us fight food insecurity, or as well for means of improving our nutrients, or like to reduce nutrient deficiencies. So now I'm speaking from the science perspective in terms of what those foods, what's their role, the new foods that were brought in that later became part of our traditional diets.
All right, let's speak a little bit about what we actually can find, because every time I go to a grocery store, I feel like someone is playing a trick on me. I can't find some of these vegetables that, we grew up our grandmothers making. We were even talking about with our producer just now about a pumpkin that we haven't seen in a very long time. And it feels like a lot of the stuff that we grew up eating, whether it's different types of maize or different types of beans, it's just hard to find stuff like that. What's going on?
Well, I think it is very frustrating. It is very, very frustrating because we're not finding these foods easily, and we need to go somewhere further. They're not close to us. You're not really getting them on our mainstream shelves. It's a thing of perhaps interest that over time, as we were adopting the Western diets, we pulled away, or I don't know whether it's us who pulled away from our traditional foods, or because of exposure, we started consuming more foods from the West, that obviously the makers of foods, the market, became more focused on giving us the westernized foods or the Western foods. So it's a very huge opportunity for local makers of foods and producers to really bring these foods to our shelves easily. And what I've seen now as a trend is shops or makers of foods are bringing our foods to the shops. Like you can literally starting to get them, but either they are too expensive or the texture is not right or something is off. Like it's not necessarily how we would like those foods to be presented. And I think that puts us off as well. Like if you go now, there are certain shops that are bringing, we have in South Africa, itching, which is that cooked pumpkin mixed up with some maize meal. The texture is completely wrong. So if you know how it's prepared and you're seeing it in the shop, you're not going to buy it because you're going to think, this is not the one, the actual stringy that I grew up with. So it's a huge problem, and there's a gap there that mainstream markets should bring our foods. And I think, but it's helping that there is a growing interest in superfoods, quote unquote. So in that way, we're starting to see perhaps people being more interested in going back to our origins and eating teff and eating amaranth and just, creating that demand. We have to create that demand to the market ourselves and then we'll start to see it being trickled more in a more presentable and a more acceptable way.
Well, I heard you said quote unquote superfoods, and it seems like many of our indigenous food were already super even before the word superfood was coined, which seems these days to just be a term that is used to make things more expensive inside the grocery stores, even if they were easily available to us, back in the day. So let's speak about that. Let's identify some of these indigenous superfoods that we can have access to and we need to include a little bit more in our everyday diet. Stay on the line, Mbali. We're going to chat to you after this very short break. We're chatting to registered dietitian Mbali Mapodi. Do you have any indigenous food as part of your daily or weekly diet? Let us know at Channel Africa 1, #on the move.
Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa
On the move.
Hey, is it easy for you to find traditional foods in your pantry, or is it easy to actually even go out and source them out? That's the big question we're asking today. I remember when I was growing up, there were very interesting grains, there were interesting crops that we used to find. In terms, there were leafy vegetables and different types of beans that our grandmother would garner in back gardens that we can't really find anymore in our mainstream retail stores. As much as you go hunting anywhere, it's very difficult to find those pods. It's very difficult to find those hybrid plants that always made it on a plate. That's the big question that we're asking today. Indigenous foods, where are they? And how could we actually go back to those times? We're speaking to our guest today who's helping us on this one. That's Mbali Mapodi, who is a registered dietitian. I mean, let's look at it from a South African context. When you can reflect back on grandmother's plate, what do you miss the most, Mbali?
Oh, I miss peanuts, like ground nuts, not just the commercial nuts, the ones that we used to grow. And she'll ground the nuts. My grandmother will ground the nuts and put them everywhere. If she'll put them on amaranth leaves, like you see, she'll put them on when we are eating pumpkin, she'll put them on samp. And I miss that a lot. But I also just miss the green leafy vegetables, leave spinach and kale, put those aside. But I miss imbo, the type that
yes, that's hard to find, isn't it? I've been looking.
Very hard to find, and it was just like weeds in the garden. And my grandmother would pick that up and create a fantastic meal. So those are the things I miss, and it's difficult to find in the market. And if you do, it's pricey as well.
Yeah, I've noticed that is that if you're finding something indigenous in the market, it's almost like made as a niche product. And despite the fact that it's not really well distributed, they make it expensive.
But here's the thing with that. We were speaking about superfoods earlier. I think the problem here is that the term superfoods is made to sound trendy and new, as if it's some niche market. And that has made our African foods, because remember, when you just look into the list of superfoods, I promise you 90% of that list will have our African indigenous foods. It is the definition of what our indigenous foods are. They are superfoods. Yeah. So with that, then came this whole thing of superfoods, and then now our foods become much more expensive. You're speaking millet, sorghum, teff, amaranth, as we were saying, bambara groundnut.
Amarula as well is a bit expensive.
Amarula as well, moringa, boab fruit, fonio. All of those food items are part of the superfood list, and now, because there's this hype about superfoods as if these are new foods. We've always known, because as we were speaking about your grandmother, or like our grandmothers picking up just like even now, you're saying you've got flu. If it was back in the day,
I would have been
grandmother or
healed by
grandfather
now.
would have went outside to pick up something to boil for you as a
Absolutely.
tea. You
Yeah.
see.
I agree with you. What do you think is happening in the market? Are they colonizing our indigenous foods here? It feels like another form of colonization, man. I don't want to sound like an EFF member.
Listen, I mean, it's always as a dietitian coming into the 14 years ago when I started practicing. One of the things that frustrated me the most is that for me, when I speak about healthy eating to my clients, I needed to make reference to foods that I myself was not familiar with, because those are the foods that were in the market. And then only when I gained my confidence 2-3 years into practicing, I'm like, no, I need to speak about the foods that we grew up eating and push people back into eating those foods. So in a way, it's a form of, I don't know if it's political, but form of colonization and form of pushing us away from what we have. And once people really understand that what we have, and if we can grow our own food, we can be more able to take care of ourselves, and we don't have to rely on anybody to take care of ourselves in terms of making sure that these foods are available in mainstream retail shops. But now the problem is obviously where we stay. Sometimes it's difficult to grow to have your own garden. But if we can grow these foods, if we can have ground nuts out in our garden, if we can have these green leafy vegetables in Morocco in different forms and types, we are then cutting this thing of needing the mainstream to bring these Moroccos and then actually bring them in a high price.
You know, Mbali, as humans, we are creatures of habit. And now we live in a world where we're so used to certain foods that we eat. We eat it every day. It fills our cupboards and our pantries and our fridges. And that's the diet that we are used to now. So for someone who's looking into bringing back their indigenous food into their diet, how do you reintegrate these foods into your everyday life?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. I think what the question you asked as well at the beginning, that check your cupboards and check your kitchen, what sort of indigenous foods do you have? And then you said, I will wait, because we all know that it's not readily available. I think the start is that if we have 10 vegetables that we keep in our rotation for meals in the household, let's try that at least 3 to 5 of those vegetables are indigenous vegetables, are the vegetables that we used to eat growing up. In that way, we're starting to integrate back the indigenous food, whether it's when it comes to beans or like the staples that we have. As much as we eat your rice, but let's look into, out of the 5 staples that we rotate in our dinners or lunches in the house, 2 or 3 should be either your millet or your sorghum or things like that. In that way, we're trying to make sure that we're going back into our roots and like that. So if we try, whether it's fruits or nuts or beans or like the grains and vegetables, and we try to make sure that at least 50% of what we're keeping is part of the indigenous foods list, then I think that will take us somewhere. And going back to the point of also buying local, if wherever we're staying, oftentimes Abu Mama, like the ladies that sell on the street, they tend to have these indigenous foods for sale. So maybe buying there as well will help us support the local, but then also get us back into eating more indigenous foods. And then trying to grow our own, if we can, also can push us and get us there.
I mean, should we reclaim that space of just investigating more about our foods as Africans? And it seems like it's going to be a process because we've been accustomed to these modern vegetables and leafy products that really don't speak of where we come from. Do you think it's time to reclaim that space? I see a lot of the younger generation doing that as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've seen it as well, that it's getting more trendy in a sense, the incorporation of our foods. So I think I encourage that let's try to make it, if we are creating smoothies or we are creating salads and we are putting that online and taking videos, and let's highlight that I've added, instead of adding lettuce in my salad, I've added mustard leaf. And by doing that, we are making it, like claiming that space again, talking about it. In that way, we will not find that our foods are packaged and labeled so fancy and so expensive, and they've got this aisle in the shops where they put health foods, again, quote unquote. I dislike that aisle because it's full of our indigenous foods. But when you pick up a packet, it's 3 times what you would typically be expecting to pay for that product. So if we make it amadumbe and we make it readily, amadumbe is taro, we make it readily, like it must be normal. It mustn't be like, oh my goodness, I'm eating a superfood, but it must be incorporated in a normal way. I think over time, I like what the Gen Zs are doing, and they are just starting to incorporate it more. So we support that, and we just have to speak more and have these conversations. Obviously, I love this conversation that we're having because we have to support our indigenous foods and make sure that we bring them back. But not at a high cost. I'm very much worried about that. That so as soon as they are labeled superfoods, the price becomes too much and become unattainable for us.
Fantastic. Mbali, you've helped us so much. Thank you for joining us on the show. Where can people find you online?
Online, they can find me on Instagram, on Facebook. It's Mbali Mapoli or Eden Dietitian. And when they go online, there is normally a link that takes them directly to my website. I've got resources. I've got free meal plans that incorporate indigenous foods as well. So you can take that and start the process of getting you and your family to incorporate more of these foods that we all love, that we grew up eating.
All right, that's Mbali Mapoli. You spell the surname Mapoli. Thank you, Mbali, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That's Mbali Mapoli, who is a registered dietitian, taking us to 11:30 Central African time. Well, it's time for us to get the latest sports update. Wrapping things up for the morning is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good morning from the sports desk. We'll start here. So South Africa's Blitzboks saved their best for last this season as they went all the way in Los Angeles on Sunday to lift the World Championship title. Philip Sneemann's team beat Spain in the final of the Elite 8 team tournament following the regular season. They won 19-5 in California to end a perfect weekend. In the semi-final, they got the better of New Zealand 26-5, while on the first day of the tournament, they managed 3 wins over France, Great Britain, as well as Argentina. It was the second tournament win for South Africa this season in the sevens competition after also winning the home tournament in Cape Town during the regular season. Let's hear from the winning coach, Philip Sneemann.
I'm very happy as a coach. I think the whole team, we worked extremely hard over the last couple of weeks, and to be honest, a coach can lay out a plan and a coach can give the plan, but the buy-in comes from the players and the special moments that they created on the field. The coach can't coach that, so all credit must go to the players. I'm really proud of them, and they deserve this weekend. They played phenomenal, and they were definitely the best team this weekend.
Still on rugby news, a group of 38 players assembled in Cape Town on Sunday for the next phase of the Springbok Women's Rugby World Cup preparations with the Rugby Africa Women's Cup in Madagascar in early June, the first assignment for the group, followed by test matches against Canada later on in the month. Now, Springbok Women's Performance Coach Swayze de Bruin invited about 47 players to the 2-week-long camp with 9 players who are currently in Los Angeles, with the Springbok Sevens side joining the squad only this upcoming weekend. So the first week of camp will be in Newlands in Cape Town, while the second will be at the Stellenbosch Academy of Sports from the 9th until the 16th of May. In case you missed it, McLaren's Oscar Piastri won the 4th race in 6 races this year as he beat teammate Lando Norris in an action-packed Miami Open Grand Prix. Now, both McLaren drivers fought intense battles with early leader Max Verstappen's Red Bull as they moved up to the front of the field. Piastri, who started 4th, drove a race of clinical excellence to pass both Mercedes' Kimi Antonelli as well as then Verstappen to assume the lead before managing his gap to his pursuers right until the end. This is what he had to say following that performance in Miami.
Felt like we nailed everything we could have from a car point of view. I had to be patient at the start. You know, there was a lot going on, a lot of big maneuvers being put on out on track, and I just had to bide my time and pick my moment properly. And eventually that came, and then I knew once I got ahead of Max that I had to try and build a gap because the pace was much stronger than when I was behind him.
On to summer tennis news now. Four-time Grand Slam winner Naomi Osaka won her first WTA title since triumphing at the 2021 Australian Open. This after beating Slovenia's Kaja Jovan 6-1 and 7-5 in the final of the Al Open 35. They sent Malo a WTA 125 tournament on clay. It was the 27-year-old Japanese player's first WTA title since she became a mother in June of 2023. Osaka struggled with a lack of power as well as accuracy as she failed to progress beyond the second round of any Grand Slam since last year. The former world number one, who reached the third round of the Australian Open in January before retiring due to an injury, is set to feature in the main draw of the French Open later on this month. And finally, golf news. Scotty Scheffler secured his first win of 2025 with a dominant display at the CJ Cup Byron Nelson in Texas in the USA. The American world number one, 28 years of age as well, who finished fourth at the Masters just last month, caught in an 8 under par 63 to finish on 31 under, 8 shots ahead of nearest rival Eric van Rooyen. Now, Scheffler also equaled the record for the lowest 72-hole score in PGA Tour history, with about 235 across the 4 days. It was also his 14th PGA Tour title of his career. And that concludes your morning sports news right here in Channel Africa. More sporting updates coming up in the next hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us. The newsroom line is a +27 11714 4459. With Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move.
All right, thank you, Musibudi, for that last sports update in this morning. For now, let's get Chandu Koligege back for our latest in business.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa and Benjamin. Good morning. An African-American entrepreneur with South African roots is looking to give back by empowering young people through skills development. Philip Colley, founder of Real Priesthood Mobile Barbershops in the U.S., says he's ready to bring his business model and expertise to South Africa. Speaking to Channel Africa at the Africa Month Symposium and Festival in Pretoria, Colley emphasized the importance of equipping youth with trade skills as part of the broader African Renaissance agenda.
The type of investments that we're looking to do is to bring within the hair industry and taking my experience as a barber instructor or teacher and bringing the skills that I have from America, from the U.S. to South Africa to help to build a school, bring the skills to have a trade school of not just in the hair industry but also other fields, nursing, electricians, so we can have so our young people can have trades and build the skills.
A team of officials from the International Monetary Fund will visit Angola next week as the country edges closer to a new loan deal with the lender due to pressure following the slide in crude oil prices. Angola, which is sub-Saharan Africa's second biggest crude oil exporter, had to pay $200 million last month after financial institution JP Morgan demanded more security for its total return swap, a loan backed by Angola's dollar bonds. The IMF has not provided more details on the mission to Angola and the expected outcomes. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has given the assurance that government will continue to correct the imbalances of the past in the workplace. This follows the Democratic Alliance's High Court challenge against the Employment Equity Act. The party argues the legislation's race-based employment quotas could exclude countless South Africans from job opportunities. Reflecting on the country's progress in advancing workers' rights since 1994, Ramaphosa says there are still challenges including racial inequality in top management, non-compliance, and a lack of protection for informal workers. Meanwhile, the Democratic Alliance Labour spokesperson Michael Buckram says increasing red tape for companies to function will lead to job losses. The Employment and Labour Department has introduced 5-year numerical targets for occupational levels. The aim is to address the skewed employment of juniors to top management positions, as the department's 2024 Employment Equity Report has revealed. The report found that white workers held 62.1% of all top management positions, despite whites only accounting for 7.3% of the country's population. DA Federal Council Chairperson Helen Ziller is set to brief the media today on the party's High Court case against the new quotas for employment. Buckram says the Western Cape is the perfect example for job creation.
What we need to do is we need to actually grow the economy. We need to take into account skills, local realities of each province. You need to obviously deregulate as much as possible. You need to get rid of red tape. Every other province has fallen apart because we have looked at making the regulations more harsh. And what's our government now doing under Minister Met? They're now saying, well, we've got this equity legislation. It's failed us horribly, so let's tighten the bolts.
Oil prices tumbled over 2% after oil-producing group OPEC Plus agreed to accelerate oil production increases, while Taiwan's dollar surged to almost 3-year highs at the start of a central bank-packed week for world markets. European shares held just below Friday's one-month peaks, while U.S. equity futures dipped and overall trading was subdued by public holidays in Japan, China and Britain. Brent crude oil and U.S. West Texas crude futures fell more than $1 each after a weekend decision by OPEC to further speed up oil output hikes. Let's have a look at financial indicators this morning. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 603 in Botswana 13.50. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 289. Zambia 27 kwacha 78. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 65. Russia 82 rubles 57. India 84 rupee 57. China 7 yuan 21. South Africa $1 is at 18 rand 35. $1 is at 75 pence to the British pound and 88 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,257, platinum at $957 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil at $59.10 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chandruko Ligege.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge. Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa on the move. Opportunity with 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle. We deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage.
Africa Time. Really interesting conversations that we just had. One about indigenous foods. And I said to you, open your cupboards when you get home today, or if you're already home, open your cupboards, open your pantry, open your fridge. How many indigenous African food can you identify? And, you know, I'm saying indigenous, and I'm stressing that because I don't want you to think I'm saying how many traditional food. Because there are so many food that we have that we've called our traditional food that's actually not food that is indigenous to us here in Africa. So maybe on a weekly basis, here in South Africa, we call maize meal bab. Maybe on a weekly basis, you eat bab. So you have a big bag of maize meal and you're like, yeah, I have indigenous food. No, you have traditional food. Yeah. But if you were to have indigenous food, maybe you'd have a big bag of sorghum instead of a big bag of bab. Sure. Then you would have indigenous food in your pantry. So you need to be able to tell the difference. Which one of the foods in your pantry is traditional and which are indigenous and which are both. Yes, some indigenous food are very well part of our traditional food. Sorghum is part of our traditional food. It's just been moved out a lot and maize replaced it in many of our pantries.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other day I was actually so disappointed because I've been enjoying this maize meal that's yellow, yellow maize meal. Then I looked at the packaging the other day and it's like genetically modified. You can't win. You try, make it yellow, but it's still genetically modified.
Yeah. So it's not the real yellow
maize.
So it's been processed. Maybe they just added some food coloring for you there. They made it yellow.
Don't know, man. I don't know. Don't know what it means.
Oh, man. Well, how much of that, I mean, even if you don't have it now, maybe it's time to think about that a little bit. Start integrating more and more indigenous food in your diet. And I think it would do great because here's the thing. The food that grows indigenously in any region grows there for a reason. That means it's good for the people, for the climate of that particular place. So perhaps if we start taking in a little bit more indigenous food, it could really change how we look at our health as well. And maybe it could change our health overall. So maybe if we try it as a challenge, buy 1 or 2 indigenous foods, put it as a part of your daily or weekly diet and see if that changes your health in any sort of way. And maybe that's a challenge that we can all take to ourselves. At Channel Africa 1, do you have any indigenous food in your cupboards? Do you have an indigenous food in your fridge, in your pantry? Let us know. And how is it treating you? How is your health from eating some of that indigenous food, mostly called superfood? Is it too expensive in the stores now? If you go and look for maize in the store versus just down the aisle where you look for sorghum? How much is 1 kg of maize and how much is 1 kg of sorghum? Sorghum is much healthier, by the way, than maize. And wherever you are on the African continent, of course, that is a very different example for you. But we all have indigenous food from our various regions here on the African continent. Well, we're keeping things moving before we say goodbye. This is Black Coffee. Wish you were here.
Benjamin Moshatama and Palesa
On the move. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history.
You're part of the Channel Africa family. Black Coffee, which you are here taking us out of On the Move. We're, of course, keeping things moving. Before we say goodbye, we bring in Lulu Gabu, who's letting us know what's coming up on today's Africa Update. Good morning, Lulu.
Good morning. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
All right, so today coming up, we're focusing on the African Union. They're condemning the attack on Port Sudan. We'll unpack that story. And then the International Court of Justice is delivering its order on a case concerning the prevention and punishment of a crime of genocide in Sudan versus the United Arab Emirates. All these and more coming up on Africa Update. And also another big story, the SADC deployment of soldiers in the eastern DRC. South African soldiers, the SANDF, they're saying that by the end of May, the whole contingent will be back in the country.
Okay.
So that's something to also to look forward to that we have been focusing on. So Africa Update.
All right, there's a lot coming up on the Africa Update. Stay with us right here on Channel Africa, www.channelafrica.co.za. Have yourself a fantastic day. We'll be back tomorrow as the On The Move team. Playing you out with this one, Sanal Musician featuring Ami Faku Intwingawe.
But shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs,